Good evening. It being Tuesday, May 29th, I'd like to call the meeting to order, and may I have an acceptance of the agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Harris.
Second.
Second by Mr. Vignani. All in favor?
Aye.
So the first order of business is reorganization of the Board of Selectmen, which means that I am commencing my time as chair, which has been wonderful. It's been a great honor to serve Scituate.
You have an ant.
Oh, seriously? Great, ants.
They're all over the building.
Okay, thanks. Anywho. So I just wanted to say it's been my honor for the past year to serve everyone in town, especially to represent all the town employees, and actually we got a lot done this year. It was busy, but I learned a lot, and hopefully prepared myself to be even just as effective, if not more, for the next 3 years. So I just want to say thank you. It's been great working with the board, and I appreciate all the support and advice everyone has afforded me over the past 12 months.
Before I make a nomination, or before you ask for a nomination for the next chairman, or rank if I could, I just want to say that, I've been on the board for 22 years, and I've said this to Mara once or twice over the last year, and I mean it. I was thinking tonight before we came here, this was a very difficult year, and you did a fantastic job. It's awful hard. You have children and a husband to try to balance. Being a chairman, especially in a difficult year, just takes so much time. My wife and I were talking about it tonight, and she said how happy or relieved you're going to be, to step aside. It's just it's a lot of work.
Thank you.
If none of us can make an event, it falls back on the chairman, and they always end up going. So thank you very much. You did a fantastic job.
Thank you,
really
Sean.
did.
That means a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, I also want to say, to Sean, having been on the board with Sean now almost 11 and a half years, Tony for 10, and this is not to take away anything that either one of them have been as chairman or any of our predecessors who've been on the board, because it's a difficult position being chair, and that's because, there are 5 of us. We all have to work together. We don't always agree, and it's a lot harder when you disagree with somebody who's up here to continue to work in them, because you have to change and work on other things in town, and you have to learn to respect everybody's opinion. And walking into this, it's funny because this was, what is it, fourth year? And one of the things I know myself, Tony and Sean could probably speak to it, and I'm sure Karen might be thinking about it, it's always nice to think about being the chair. And once you're the chair, and then you get the chair. And then when you're in the chair, there's dead silence. And then you got the agenda. And then you got people who come up. And then you can deal with contentious issues, because people come in here and they get angry, and sometimes, rightly so, you try to calm things down. And you're dealing with a lot of management, plus you're also dealing with board members to make sure they get to be heard, because they want to be able to put their 2 cents in. And so you did a wonderful job. You came into a situation which was unexpected, Right away, we had somebody on the board who resigned. And then with a month into it, we had our town administrator who decided to resign, and then continue on for a few more months, and then cut it short. All of which was very difficult, because, the chair is meeting with the town administrator on a weekly basis, and that was not an easy situation. Certainly, I think the chair was put in. And you did a masterful job. You took the high road all throughout it, and then you were involved in finding our new town administrator, which is, again, a lot different than we originally did it back in the first time we had done it, because the regulations had changed about how you're going to interview different people during the process. And, then we have senior center, we have issues going on throughout town, and then storms, major storms, all of which takes a lot of time. And a lot of people say, well, that's what you signed up for. Yeah, you do. But there are a lot of things you don't realize you sign up for, and then you find out it takes away from your family, it takes away from your job, and, the negativity certainly factors into it. And I have to say more, since I've been on the board, you did a masterful job, to Sean's point, and again, that's not denigrating either of my fellow board members or any of the past ones, but I don't think they were confronted with what you were confronted with in that time period. And that's an awful lot to ask of a person, and you did a phenomenal job. So I just want to say, it's a privilege to have you on the board as a fellow board member, and you did a great job as chair. Obviously, that doesn't mean you're gone, but you're right, Sean, to your point, is that now the chair is the center, and now you're the one that's going to have to step up if the other board members can't be available. And I have to say, you stepped up every time. Good job.
Thank you. Very nice of you. Thank you. So, want me
What's
to take? Oh.
I can't add much more to that, Mr. Dennehy, but as the newest member, I appreciate all the leadership and guidance that you've given me in my short 8 months here. So I'm glad you're back for another 3, and looking forward to working with you, continuing to work with you.
Me too.
Great.
All right.
My turn?
Yes.
No, Maura, I won't repeat what everyone said. I know we joke around a lot, but seriously, you're dedicated to this position. People out here don't know how much time you put in behind the meetings, going to other meetings, talking to people, and the professionalism that you brought to the chairmanship has really been noteworthy. So I think you've done a great job. Great job with your speech yesterday. There's just so many other functions that the chair has to serve, and it takes up a lot more time, and you've done it all with class and dignity and done a great job. So it's my honor to have been your vice chair, and I have some parting gifts for you.
Thank you.
Lovely flowers that I just got for you,
How do you know my favorite color?
and
Thank
something
you.
in this
Too
bag.
much. Thank you very much.
A wonderful gift in the bag.
Thank you, Lorraine. And I should say thank you to Lorraine, Michelle, and the TAs that I've worked with, and Al, who's been terrific as well. So you can't do this job without a good collaborative approach. So I appreciate everything. Thank you. All. So I will entertain motions for a chair.
I move Karen Canfield for clerk.
Second.
So we went a little out of order. So I have a motion on the table to nominate Ms. Canfield for clerk, seconded by Mr. Vignani. All in favor?
Aye.
All
Vote for
opposed?
myself.
Thought you were going to be the chair.
Love that duty. It's a great duty.
4-0.
It did almost fall off my chair just then.
It's quick to get rid of that.
I'd like to make a nomination to nominate John Dennehy as chairman of the Board of Selectmen.
For the next 3 years?
One at a time.
Second.
All right. A motion on the table for Ms. Dennehy, second by Mr. Harris. Any additional discussion? There being none? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, 5-0. And then
And
vice chair customarily?
Yep, I'll make a nomination for Maura Curran to be vice chairman.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
So
so
we'll
with
play a
that, we're going to
little
switch
musical
seats.
chairs.
So thank you again. I'll just be down on the other end.
I don't count.
You had a attack for a second.
Right?
That was good.
It was good. He's going to pay, though.
Don't want you to...
All right, let me just get organized.
You're stuck.
I don't think I've ever sat here.
That's what I told Maureen.
I just want to say thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's going to be a fun year. It's going to be very quiet, right, Jim? And, as far as everything else, we'll get through things pretty quickly here. So, without further ado, let's move over to walk-ins. Are there any walk-ins? Please come forward. I'll tell you, I'll take Mr. Boyajian first. Mr. Doherty, Mr. Boyajian, would you please come on up to the center here? Mike, identify your name and address so that the audience know who you are.
Hello. My name is Fred Boyajian.
Address?
I grew up in this town
Address?
and recently returned.
Sorry, Mr. Boyajian, you got to tell us your address.
Pardon?
What's your address? I know you.
94 Marion Road.
Thank you.
I have made major investments in this town to try in the vacation rental business, and I'm here to complain. I have left messages with the town manager and with the Conservation Board and with the DPW to call me. Oh, yeah, here's a message. They'll call you. Not one of them called me. I want to emphasize that. That's not a good way to do business. It's not a good way to solve problems, because now I have to come here in person and complain, make a scene about it. Last year, we was building a seawall down in Sand Hills. My houses are all across the street from there. Now, I understand, once these things get going, you gotta just deal with it. But the project got delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed. Instead of losing a little bit of money, I lost a lot of money. It keeps on going. I keep getting promised that the job will be done and finished and everybody out of here and everything cleaned up the beach. As of this day, it's not. And I kind of wonder what kind of management is going on. Also, I kind of wonder why this project hasn't even wound down and you've started to gear up again by using it as a staging area for a gas line down Oceanside Drive during peak season, where tourism is supposed to be important in this town, and you're doing everything to hamper it. Why are you digging up Oceanside Drive in the summertime? It could have been done in the spring, it could have been done in the fall, but no. They've made some efforts to rearrange some of the stuff, but the fact is, the equipment and the materials are still there, and they could have been placed in other places along that road. And I want answers.
Well, let me tell you, number one, the town has a plan on trying to replace seawalls. It's a multi-million-dollar project, of which we've been trying to work at it skillfully. We're not, shall we say, able to, predict the weather. So we are certainly bound by trying to figure out when we can get companies who are going to do it and then doing it. It certainly protects your property, Mr. Boyage. I know exactly the street you live on. You're in my neighborhood. And you know what? It's not only protecting your property, it's protecting every property, not just on the wall, but every property that's behind the wall. And if you're complaining about the fact that we're replacing seawalls, I'm sorry, there are a lot of people complaining that we're not doing enough on seawalls. As far as the replacement of the gas line, evidently there has been problems with the gas line during the storms. And so yes, they're actually replacing the gas line, my understanding is from Turner into Oceanside in order for health and safety so that we don't have any explosions. And so just because it may be, shall we say, an inconvenience, I'm sorry. But the fact of the matter is that's when the town has the ability to do it. In this case, we can't be doing this in the middle of winter with the gas lines coming. They have a right to be able to go down the road. They're doing it now. And so unfortunately, it is an inconvenience. And I know that from other neighbors. But all I can say is, whether it's with the seawalls or whether it's with the gas line, you know, what's the option? Don't do it at all? Don't do the walls? Don't do the gas line at all? Tell people they can't get gas? That's not the option. So we have to work together. I know that might be good for oil companies, but we have to work together to try to do it. And let me tell you something. Don't be surprised that maybe another 2 or 3 years, we begin to replace the seawall from Turner all the way down to Rebecca Road. And that's going to be an imposition to the neighbors, but it's going to protect them. It's going to protect the property. So all I can tell you is I'm sorry that you're not getting back in touch. I don't know exactly who you've been, I know you understand the town administrator you've been in touch, trying to get in touch with. But if those are the complaints, you know, I don't think people in town hall are going to be able to tell you what the answer is, because I don't think you want to hear the answer, which is they're going to be done anyways. They have to be done. The walls have to be done. And you know what? The staging is going to take its time. It has to. It's not like an easy fix. So I'm sorry if that's not what you want to hear, but the reality of it is we try to work with everybody and get through it. And if there's a major problem, I agree. And I understand there have been some problems with them hitting the water line. I agree, that shouldn't happen. And that's something that we can complain with the gas company in town, do a better job. But if you're here to complain about the town fixing seawalls, I'm sorry, I can't help you out there, because they're necessary.
I didn't complain about the town fixing the seawall. I complained about the schedule of it and how why it took so long, that no one, and I made inquiries every week down with the construction company, how long is this taking? Oh, we'll be done next month, then. No, wait a minute. I have a major investment down there.
You got a 5-minute limit on walk-ins, because otherwise we can put this on a future agenda if I so decide. So I'm just telling you right now, you got 1 more minute.
Fine. The seawall hasn't worked. I got color pictures of all the water coming over that wall. You spent a lot of money, you wasted it.
Now, that's your
You made a
opinion.
good effort, you made a
That's
good
your
effort.
opinion. You know what? I've talked to a lot of people on the Coastal Coalition who disagree with you.
I'm the one directly across the street from it.
I
Don't tell me
understand
that it
Well,
works.
That's your opinion. I respectfully disagree. I'm sorry, your time is up. Mr. Doherty, you're up next.
David Doherty, 122 Gilson Road.
Welcome back.
Thank you. I'm sure you're tired of hearing about me and wind turbine, but I just want to point out one thing about it. Later on in a half hour, if things go as scheduled, you're going to be discussing contract for testing of the
Correct.
noise to see if it's in compliance, excuse me, if it's in compliance with the DEP regulations.
Well, let me ask you this, Mr. Doherty. Is that something for the discussion that we're going to be talking about?
No, I'm not
'Cause I
going to
don't wanna
talk,
be
I'm not going to
going
talk
off.
about that
Okay,
in
fair
particular.
enough.
7 months ago was when you decided to do that. It
Yeah.
was in October, I was here the last time I was here. You came this close to shutting down the turbine, then you decided you wanted to find an option because they're going to have grievous financial impact on the town relative to fines from the owner. That was 7 months ago, and you decided that you couldn't shut it down because it's going to be tested. If you do give that contract out tonight, it's going to be at least a couple of months before you're in any position, or another year. It's over 6 years. The complaints kept coming in over the winter, even though I was away. I kept track of my neighbor anyway. They made 36 complaints just in one home. The windows were closed in the winter, so it's not a matter, everybody's open. The summer months are coming. It's only going to be further exacerbated with the windows being open. I don't see a timely end or a resolution to this. I mean, it's going on and on and on.
I can tell you this. Let's get to the contract later on tonight. I'll find out the timing on it. It may mean that we need to ask people to, again, give us the opportunity to go through this testing. Unfortunately, the contracts didn't come back. We weren't able to get somebody in the time that we thought would be optimum. So we may need to ask people again to work with us on it. But let's discuss that, because I need to know the timing on what they're
I
looking at.
understand. I was just trying to say, in hindsight, it may would have been better to shut it down, and then when you get the contract, to turn it on again. I just want to point out one other little thing.
Yep.
You said last October when I was here, if any family has a right to complain.
Yep.
That family has a couple of children that go to school, and they don't want to come home to their own home. They want to stay at school as long as they can because they're uncomfortable. I can't imagine what 6 years of that is going to be doing to a youth's mind growing up. I mean, if you don't care about adults, I mean,
Mr. Doherty,
my
we don't want
point
to turn
being
this... No,
is-
hold on. It's not that we don't care. I don't want you to color this in a way that the board is being careless. It's not, you know. So that's why I say, we're going to look at that report, we're going to figure it out. I need to know the timing on it. I think the board needs to know the timing on it. And the discussion you're talking about may be something that the board will consider. I don't know. But at this point, again, I would say, you know, we do care. That's the reason why...
I wasn't saying you were careless. I didn't imply that or any way. I was
Thought you
just
said
trying to say
careless, so I
is,
just wanted to
perhaps
make
you
sure.
didn't understand the importance of certain aspects of this.
To be honest with you, I do, which is why
Okay.
we're reconsidering it, the reason why I talked about it in October to reconsider it. If I didn't, I would have said just the opposite at that time, so that's why we're looking at it.
And the other thing,
Better that.
if you want to take this as a threat, I'm a patient man. I'm not going away.
It's not a threat, okay? There's nothing wrong with patience, providing people are respectful when they come here.
Oh, I
That's all
am.
that I ask as chair.
Have I been disrespectful?
You have not, that's why I'm just saying, if we have that understanding, we're fine.
I'm just hoping that everybody that's listening to this in TV land is beginning to understand what's happening.
I'm sure they will.
Thank you very much.
Any other walk-ins? Please come on up. I'm going to need your name and address. Front.
Andrea Hunt, 66 Manlot Road. I'm hoping that Karen reported to the board that the school committee finally made their vote and released their 14 acres of Ellis property into surplus, so that the vote of 2016, when the town meeting voted to return that land to conservation and get a conservation restriction, is now binding. I'm wondering, since we also voted at town meeting this year on the 77 acres to go into a CR, I believe it's Wildland Trust. Is it Wildland Trust that the town is working with, or the conservation?
We are working with one of the conservation groups, I'm not sure, has that been determined?
It's Wildland
It is
Trust.
Wildland.
It is Wildland Trust.
Yes.
I was hoping that you might be able to give us a time frame, or let me know if, in fact, the procedure has started so that these 14 acres can be included along with the 77.
So, Ms. Canfield, other than probably, I'm not sure if she had emailed the board or texted the board, other than that, we have not heard officially from the school committee. And so we
Okay.
need to hear from them officially. Once we
Okay.
hear officially, then the board will take its actions. As far as the status on Wildlands Trust and being able to move the 77 acres into it, I cannot give you a timing on it. However, I would like to think this board would be able to have something certainly put together by the next annual town meeting to be able to vote it and take care of it.
Okay, and the 14 acres
Until we
should be
have
able to go along
official
with that?
notice, as soon as we have official notice from the school, then we can address the 14 acres. Can it go with there? We'll have to wait and see. Maybe it'll go sooner. I don't know. But once
Okay,
we have it, we'll know it, and we'll put it out there in due course, and then everybody will be aware.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else for walk-in? All right, seeing none, at 7:25, we're going to move on to the next, which happens to be the town administrator's report. Jim?
Two real quick. Veterans Day yesterday, fantastic ceremony. Memorial Day, sorry. Fun day. DPW did a great job getting ready. Police, fire participated in the schools. I thought the crowd was excellent considering the weather was not the best. It was a really good day yesterday. The other thing I want people to know is the last spring household hazardous waste collection will take place on June 16th from 9 to 1. They'll be at our highway facility at 68 Captain Pierce Road. Situate residents do not have to pay for that. And it changed this year, you will be able to drop off latex paint, even though it's not considered hazardous.
You
will
can.
have latex.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Just one event, so. It's the last one of the spring, there won't be any more until the fall, so if you have any hazardous waste, get rid of it. That's the time and place.
What's the day again, Jim?
June 16th, and it's on our website.
Questions from the board? Anybody?
We used to do a day where you could get rid of electronic stuff as well. Have we ever thought about doing that again? Where you could get rid of televisions and computers?
I think they take those to the transfer station now.
You pay for them though, but I
Yeah.
think there was a day that you had like a free day for electronics maybe. I don't remember how
So
many.
you can take them through the collaborative.
Is that it?
So the town can, yeah.
Maybe.
We charge what it costs us to get rid of it, we don't make any money on it, so. I'll have to check with Claire from Social Recycling.
Great.
Good. Any other questions? No?
No.
Moving on then, let's move on to the first agenda item, which is a discussion vote on the donation of the Scituate Fire Department. Chief, John Murphy, come on up. Chief?
Couple of
Good
associates who helped us out here. Good evening. One of our thanks for your service last year. John, congratulations. I have with me Captain Pat Riley, who runs our dive team, and Bob Payne, who was instrumental in this fundraiser. A little background, Bob and I used to work together on the commuter boats from years ago. We've been friends for a long time. He lives in town, been a commercial diver, very experienced, and actually is involved with training our dive team in underwater communication. So Bob's been a big help, just donating his time to make sure our divers are safe and they have the right equipment going forward. So it's been a big improvement, and Bob was instrumental, actually his idea to do this fundraiser for us. So in May 11th, we had a fundraiser at the Barker Tavern, and we raised a total of $11,055 net proceeds. So after everything was paid off from the Barker Tavern, gave us a great opportunity there. I have a list here, I can give it to you after, who made donations to us. So the $11,055 is primarily going to go to dry suits for the divers. 6 divers on the dive team. The dry suits are around, between close to $2,000. So we feel we have enough money. We met our goal of $10,000 to funds raised. So, when you're asking the level budget, I just didn't have, $12,000 to ask for. So Bob stepped up, saw the need and what we do. We'd have better equipment, and worked with Captain Riley. Pat runs our dive team, been a captain 3 years now, and together these two put a great night together. Great donations. We have a lot of people to thank, especially the Barker Tavern and these two gentlemen right here, for the success of that night. I say over $11,000 raised in a 3-week period. So kudos to them, and I'm happy the guys on the dive team will have better equipment and to make things safe, especially in our waterfront.
Thank you.
We're asking the board
That's
to,
really great. I
Yeah.
mean, that's, again, donating, and being able to raise that amount of money for all six suits, is that what?
6 is correct. Yeah, so, and they've also worked together as far as getting all our other equipment in our dive truck up to speed, so everything's inspected, done, it's all up to speed, so, you know, just, they're ongoing training now. We've often working with Captain Ryan on the training stuff, so we're just trying to tighten things up, make sure we're ready to go if we need it.
Have we had these before, dry suits before?
We have in the past, years ago, Sean, we had a couple. I think the older ones, we had some maintenance issues, you know, things tear in these suits, they
Oh, I
can be
know,
very
yeah,
expensive. So I think the newest suits are actually made more durable, more flexible, more user-friendly. So Bob has worked with Captain Riley and trying to pick out the right dry suit for our team and to really identify what our mission is and to make sure. Shockproof, right, yeah.
Well, when you're wearing a dry suit, I don't think you have to worry about shocks. So how quick can you, I mean, I had one that took a while to get into. Now they've come a long way, so you can get into them a lot quicker, and that's the whole idea.
Everything we're looking at now is front entry, one person can put it on. You don't have no zipper across the back. It's
Right.
about 45 seconds a minute, you're in it. Good to go.
That's
Yeah,
most
response
important.
time is key, you're right.
Right.
So, yeah, we're looking forward to the new boat to be able to have a good platform for that, so,
Can you shop it around to the different dive shops? I know Marshfield and Weymouth, can you do
Yeah,
that?
we
Would you-
have done
do you-
that.
Do you have an organization that, you know, with other departments that you might be able to get some type of better pricing for your municipality?
I know Captain Riley's been doing a lot of investigating on what suits the right suit, getting pricing, as Bob has too. We were going to Marshall, we found out Plymouth Dive Shop is actually better to work with as far as price and, you know, and equipment, so I think you guys are pretty happy with them so far. We used to work with a guy in Quincy, so, but we're gonna make sure we do our homework before we buy the dry suits. What's the best suit for the money?
Right.
And make sure we, you know, just don't jump into this because we have the money, so these two gentlemen are working on that, and as soon as they come up with a solution, we'll move forward.
Great.
Other questions?
Thank
Just
you.
want to say thank you. Thank you, Bob. It's a great asset to have your expertise and help everybody. That's a lot of money.
It's a small bit of what these guys do every day, and, you know, it's like, why wouldn't you want to help?
Yeah,
Oh,
I'd like to
thank
just
you.
thank Bob a lot. It was his idea, he put in the most time to it, you know, working full-time, and then every night he's calling me, I got this idea, I got that idea. It was put on mostly by him. He did all the legwork.
Just had a second baby, you wanted to get out of the house.
And the other thing about the dry suits, there's going to be a lot of research before a decision, these guys make a decision, but there's a lot of, it's just to keep the divers warm, but some last longer than others, and there's advantages and disadvantages to all of them. There is no perfect dry suit out there. This isn't buy a dry suit once and have it 10 years from now, but it's better than what the equipment is in stock now, so.
It's come a long way.
Total home run.
Right.
So I'm going to leave this list with you who donated, but I want to point out one donation that Bob was able to get. You know him, Sean, Joe Clapp from Janelle Ford, made a $5,000 donation.
Wow.
He's from Marshfield, he keeps a boat in Scituate, was very generous. I know Bob's known him for a long time, and I spoke with him when I went up to get the check, and very generous donation,
Everybody
$5,000.
was
So
great in this town.
Yeah.
There were no no's. It was just, how can we help?
That's great.
Yeah, they were great, and I'll leave that list with you, so there's a lot of people here to thank, and they will all get personal thank yous and cards from me, so.
So do we need a motion for that? Is there one in our?
Probably to accept,
Motion to
right?
accept $11,055.
That's fine. I can make it. I'll make a motion to accept $11,055 raised from a variety of fundraisers to go towards the Scituate Fire Department dive suits.
Second.
Second, first by Maura Curran, seconded by Karen Canfield. All in favor?
Aye.
All against? 0, 5-0. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Captain, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Thank you very much. All right, moving on to another discussion vote of the Library Foundation. Jenny, I think I saw you earlier. Ayers, the chairman. Welcome.
Thank you.
We got Skip and a few other people.
Yes.
If you could, just do your name and address and then identify.
Ginny Ayers, 10 Crescent Ave.
Thank you.
I am president of the Library Foundation. I am here with Skip DeBrusque, Joe McNally, and Peter Lincoln, who are
Evening.
just a few of the 17 volunteers, official and unofficial, who are helping these days with the Library Foundation. Wanted to give you an update on our fundraising and also present some memorandums of agreement that we generally hand over. As for the fundraising, we are over 1.55 million to date. And continuing to fundraise, but mostly right now we are continuing to receive pledge payments. Anything from $20 a month, families have signed up and make automatic payments, $250 a year, and then most recently a $20,000 payment from the Hamilton Company Charitable Foundation, which is Maura and Harold Brown, and that brings their total donation to $106,000 and completes their $100,000 pledge to name the community room after her parents, Justice Joseph and Margaret Nolan. So we're obviously extremely grateful for their unbelievable generosity, but we're also grateful for each and every dollar that we're getting from each and every citizen right now, whether it's $20 a month or $20,000, it's all going into the town. We're very grateful. And to that end, we did want to present you with, we have another $100,000. I'm gonna leave the checks.
Where's Nancy?
Where's Nancy? That's exactly.
Yeah, where's Nancy?
Thank you very much. That's really nice.
That brings the total donations to 1.1 million thus far. So, and we are still continuing. As the town, as the library kind of finishes its few little punch list items, we're trying to finish our campaign too. And so just trying to get the awareness out there that we are still fundraising and it is still for the town and for the library. We're doing this by focusing on the 1,000 Homes program, some grant programs, and larger donors as well. The 1,000 Homes program, as you know, is designed to let young families make installment payments, whether, over 1 to 3, 4 years. And to that end, we're hosting a Books and Brews event this weekend on Sunday at the Untold Brewery, the new brewery, Untold Brewing. And they, Joe has a few flyers we'll hand out. It's from 6 to 9 p.m. The tickets are $40 per person. There's a 100-person capacity, so we're asking people to try and buy tickets ahead of time because they will be limited. You can get them on the foundation website, which is ScituateLibraryFoundation.org. And if anybody wants to write a check or has questions, you can also get them through Liz Henry. Her email is lizlynchhenry@gmail.com. And it should be a great time. Untold Brewery has graciously donated their facility, and they will be offering brewery tours. And Chef's Table, Ellen McKenzie Catering, Main State Bakery, Mill Wharf, and Oro have all agreed to donate bites, to go along with the beers. It's an adults-only function. There will be a raffle and a small auction as well, and we're certainly hoping to get new 1,000 Homes families as well. We're also hosting, to the larger donor end, we're hosting smaller wine and cheese parties at private homes. A couple individuals have stepped up. We have 2 scheduled so far. And we're hoping, if anybody else is interested in hosting your neighbors and friends at an event, it's a great way to share all that Jesse, director, has done with the library. It's just the good news is that the library is selling itself these days. People walk in and just are so great with the space. And Jesse mentioned the other day, and we keep finding, people come back for the collections, whether it's the original collection or the hard collection or the electronic checkouts. But people are also coming just for the space, and it's becoming this community place just to connect with people in this digital age. Everybody can come and find out, you don't have to have an excuse to go and talk to someone. So if we just are getting, the more people we can just get into the library, it's managing to sell itself. So we're grateful that it was approved and done. And lastly, I have 2 memorandums of agreement for you to sign. Both are represent $2,500 book stacks, or $2,500 donations for book stacks, which I think that was our minimum with you getting signed. One was donated by Patricia and Paul Murphy. We'll be naming a stack, and the other is by the Spires family. They've been signed by the Library Board of Trustees. And of course, we want to thank them as well as everybody who has donated thus far, and contributed so much to this Building for the Future campaign. And I'd also like to note that speaking of the campaign, the new acetate forms, the donor board at the library, the capital campaign donor board right at the top of the stairs has acetates that are changeable. So that went up last June when we opened the library, and we have just received the updated version. So people who donated over the past year, their names should be on there, and that should be installed by the end of the week. As well, the original donor board is going back up. That will be hung in the book group room. So, everybody who donated prior to the campaign and who want to continue to donate after the campaign will have a facility, they have little plaques on it, and they can put their names, and those plaques actually have a little room to put a quote and some donations and memorials. So that's great, and we are very thankful for all your continued support and for that of the community.
Questions?
May I ask an unrelated question when we're done with this?
Sure.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. Karen.
So, am I right, it's been 6 years that the capital campaign really has been from the first? It's been a long time.
At least,
and
right?
Let's go.
This core
Let's go with
group-
6. It's been at least 6, yeah.
Yeah, this core group
Some of us have
has...
been in it longer than others.
Skip's been working on it for 47 years. The core group of people that have worked on to raise $1.1 million in cash to the town already is just extraordinary. And, just as with the dive team, this town is very generous and very supportive of things that, really benefit everyone. So, again and again, thank you for all of that work. Sorry, Sean.
No, that's all right. I wasn't going to step in front of you.
Yeah, just while we have the library people here, I just wanted to ask what the status is of the HVAC system down in the... I was in a meeting there
Well,
a couple of weeks ago.
Can I jump in? Nancy's at a meeting now, and I asked her on her way there tonight, Public Buildings is meeting tonight, and I said, find out, since Karen took over I said, find out what the status of that is. Maybe Jim knows more than...
Yeah, they're going to discuss it tonight.
All right,
Yeah,
okay.
it's on the list.
We're not going to forget it until
Yep.
it's fixed.
I'll take it.
It's still...
I hope not, yeah.
I can tell you that, yep.
I just want to say thank you to all of you. Thank you so much. 1.55 million, that's great. So, you had a lot of doubters in the beginning, so you're certainly proving everybody wrong, so thank you.
Welcome. It's a good cause, it really is. And the more I see the library and see everybody in there, the more I'm happy to do it.
What's good is that you might be now winding down, which is perfect timing for another cause. So don't get too far away from us. all right?
We won't let 'em go.
FYI. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
welcome. Thank
very
you.
much. And please make sure that Moira, what's her,
Laura.
Brown, it's actually Nolan. Please tell her thank you very much for that donation.
We will certainly do that.
Father's a great man.
Yep, he is. That's great.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
folks.
Thank you.
Jenny, you can give those to Lorraine.
Oh, yeah.
All right,
thank you very
gonna
much.
move on. We need Jesse, you're next. Vote discussion, outdoor entertainment permit. Jesse Finney, Director of the Town of Scituate Library. Where's the invite?
You've already seen it.
I didn't get one
I saw it
yet.
online.
This is the invite. Everybody's invited.
Good.
So this is for us to have a summer concert series starting on June 27th. We'll skip the next week because it's the 4th of July, and then going for the next 5 weeks. Wednesday evenings, 6 p.m. start time. Most of the bands will wrap up in about an hour, maybe an hour and a half. We're going to invite people to sit on the lawn, bring a chair, bring a towel, bring your beach blanket from the day of being at the beach and come on over. The 27th is actually a summer reading kickoff, so we're going to have ice cream, face painting, a henna tattoo artist for the teens, and hopefully it will be beautiful and everything will be out on the lawn. We really want people to take advantage of the facility, especially being almost a year in the new building.
So is this the 27th? What day of the week is it?
It's a Wednesday, so they'll all be on Wednesdays.
All Wednesdays, with the exception of the 4th of July week.
Yes, yep.
Questions from the board?
You have a couple. Where on the lawn will it be held, Jesse?
So where the porch is,
Okay, right in
looking
front of it?
out that way. try to keep little kids a little off of where the street is, yeah.
And I know you sent notification to the abutters. Any feedback?
Not so far, but I
Okay.
did leave them all of my various contact information as well as the dates of the board meetings.
I think it's a great
Sounds like
idea.
fun.
When I was in Cooperstown with my son 3 or 4 years ago, I remember where I was staying, I had to drive by the library, and they actually put a big sheet out and was doing films during the summer, which I thought
Yeah.
was really cool. This kind of reminded me a little bit something like it. It's different, but I have to say, I like the idea, so.
Thank you.
I
We're
hope
really
it's
excited about
successful.
it. Thank you.
All right, we need a motion. Somebody want to give me one?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Move to grant an outdoor entertainment permit to the Scituate Town Library Director Jesse Finney for Wednesday evenings, July 27th, July 11th, July 18th, July 25th, August 1st, and August 8th, 2018, from 6 to 7:30 p.m.
The first one's June 27th.
Did I say, Oh,
I think
thank you
you're
for
on
that
the
correction,
July
Mr.
one.
Vignani. So noted.
Motion by Ms.
Second.
Canfield, seconded by Mr. Vignani. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody against? No. Unanimous. Thank you very much, Jeff.
Thank you so
Jesse.
much. I'm off to talk about that exciting HVAC.
Keep us informed. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to the next outdoor entertainment permit. Dan Vignani, I
I'm
think
going to recuse myself.
You better.
Vignani will step off for now.
I'm going to give you the invitation, just so you
Thank
know.
you. Well, that's
Oh,
very
act
kind of
surprised,
you.
Tony.
That's very cute.
Cute.
Graduation party.
Yep.
Scheduled for
June 23rd.
June 23rd, and you want to be able to have acoustic outdoor music from...
Like 4 to 5:30, and then
5:30?
they'll just be regular outdoor speakers, so.
Okay, so, do you want, so is that the timing that you're asking, 4 to 5:30 or 4 to 6?
I would say like 4 to 7, just
4 to
in
7,
case
so you
it,
have
yeah,
it
because it'll be a
later
little louder, yep.
You sent notice to abutters.
All the abutters were notified a week ago, and 2 sent back very positive
Oh, good.
feedback, so I think we're all set.
Questions from the board?
You're also having a DJ, though, till 9.
No, it's
Oh,
not a
that went away?
DJ, no,
Oh,
that's
okay.
just regular house speakers, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha.
Any questions? Entertain a motion, then?
Nope.
Any, go ahead.
Move to grant an outdoor entertainment permit to Anthony and Ann Vignani for an acoustic guitar at a private event on 6/23/18 at 98 Chief Justice Cushing Highway from 4 to 9 p.m., but the acoustic guitar is what, 4 to 6?
It's just 4 to 5:30,
4 to-
yeah.
Okay, 4 to 6 p.m.
Yep.
Sorry.
Motion by Ms. Curran,
Second.
second by Ms. Canfield. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Nope. Unanimous.
Great,
Congratulations.
Very much
Congratulations.
appreciate it. Congratulations on the
Fun, Ann.
graduation. It's awesome. All right, moving on to the next, 7:40. It's a discussion vote on a contract for wind turbine acoustical study. Mr. Bangert, as always, it's good to see you. Special projects. Bangert.
On behalf of SCTV, I'll put my SCTV hat on for a second. Could, the microphones need to be a little closer.
Oh, a little closer?
Yeah, otherwise folks can't hear your pearls of wisdom.
Thank you, Al.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. This has been something that we discussed last fall and has taken quite a bit of time to bring to this point, and I'll explain why in a minute. One thing I'd like to remind the board too is that starting this summer, resuming this summer, will be the mitigation of the operation of the turbine in the nighttime hours when certain wind conditions exist. Those were the wind conditions which were determined to cause the majority of noise disturbances over the course of the last 2 or 3, 4 years, I think.
So, Al, let me just stop you. This is the same mitigation that we talked about in years past, that's when certain optimal conditions happen, it shuts down.
Yes, right. And that is in the summer months, starting at, it's either May 15th or June 1st. I think actually it's Memorial Day till Labor Day. We may have extended it to May 15th to October 15th. I can't remember that exactly, but.
June 15th, June 15th.
So that is underway. All right, well, what I'm here today to discuss now is the wind turbine acoustical study, which in October, the Board of Selectmen asked that this study be commissioned to determine if the wind turbine was operating in compliance with the Department of Environmental Protection's Division of Air Quality Noise Regulations. The official regulation is called 310 CMR 7.10. In other words, that is the regulation or law that determines whether or not the wind turbine and other sources of noise are within a reasonable level or at least within compliance. So, after consulting with the DEP, we issued a request for proposals, developed it, posted it, and advertised it in January. The RFP was sent to 11 firms. We received only 3 responses by the due date in March, and of these, 2 were incomplete, and the third had a serious defect, so we determined that we could not proceed with that RFP. Several other firms had indicated to me that they did not respond because of other priorities that would prevent them from meeting the timeline in the RFP. And to be clear, we are looking for a firm that has a balance of having done work for industry as well as having done work for communities. We're looking for a firm that has accredited acoustical engineers with experience in Massachusetts with the DEP's protocol, and a firm that has engineers who are willing to do this under specific wind conditions that can be determined shortly before they occur, and therefore come out in the middle of the night and set up sampling and do the testing. So it's a fairly small needle we're trying to thread here in terms of finding a firm that will meet our needs. Another factor is we want to have a firm that is supported by the developer in the sense that if we determine that the turbine through this testing is not in noise compliance, we need to be able to say this is a credible piece of data and therefore the turbine needs to be corrected. And if the owner of the turbine doesn't agree with the testing methodology, or the DEP doesn't agree with our testing methodology and the protocol that was used, then we're going to be facing a he said, she said battle in the courts over, we're saying it's too noisy, they're saying that the testing was inadequate. So that, again, is the needle we're trying to thread. So the second RFP was issued in March. We received 4 responses. The responses were evaluated versus the criteria of experience with field testing, familiarity with Massachusetts DEP protocol, the methodology they had for monitoring the wind conditions, their understanding of the tasks at hand, and the qualifications of their staff. 2 firms were assessed to be acceptable. One was rated superior, that's Epsilon Associates, and there was a second firm that was rated adequate. Epsilon Associates, the superior firm, is $50,000 for this testing. The other firm was $52,000. So my recommendation is we proceed with the firm called Epsilon. Payment for this study would be provided by the wind turbine revolving account, which is funded exclusively from revenues that are generated by the turbine. In other words, not coming from the general fund or the taxpayers' other funds. I would recommend that if the board wants to move forward with this study, that we award the contract to Epsilon Associates, and I reviewed this with the DEP, with Scituate Wind, and with Third Cliff resident David Daugherty. So now I have time for questions.
So, Sean, go ahead.
Al, you said we selected the firm. Are there any, is there a benchmark the DEP requires of the, this is all so new, so, like if Tony and I wanted to bid on it, you know, no experience at all, is it open for anyone to bid, or do you have to meet a certain criteria? And I'm not saying from you, does DEP say, no, Tony and Sean, they can't even bid on it, they don't know what they're doing?
Yes, there are firms that have accreditations for acoustical testing. One of the qualifications was that they have done acoustical testing on wind turbines in the field, and that they've done them in Massachusetts using the Massachusetts protocol. And I reviewed with the DEP some of the firms that had presented themselves to me, and they had recommendations based upon firms they had worked with and knew met our qualifications. So clearly, I'm not an expert at evaluating these firms. I'm relying upon the accreditations, the references given, and the advice from the DEP noise group.
Great, thanks.
Karen?
No, it's been a long process, and I guess my question really is two questions. One, is Mr. Darty, are you satisfied that the contract parameters meet the concerns that you have?
Well, I understand the RFP, how it was written and why it was written. We could talk around that for hours about whether it was written properly, but it was done the way that I guess you have to do. I disagree with Mr. Bangert's recommendation for Epsilon. I prefer Centec, which was the other firm. And if you're interested, I can tell you my reasons why. Even though they're $2,000 more, it's really, I don't find that a big thing.
I will be interested, but I know that Al's got a pretty rigorous criteria that he employs when he looks at all the different parameters that are necessary, so.
Epsilon is the older firm, having been in this industry longer, having done testing longer, specifically on wind turbines. The other firm has a younger cadre of people. I think one of Mr. Darty's comments earlier to me, which I investigated a bit, was that some of the members in Epsilon have worked in other firms. One of the firms was Tech Environmental, which was the firm that we hired immediately after, that we hired after the turbine was set up. Remember, there were some complaints early on about the turbine to the Board of Health. Our contract with the turbine owner was that the town could hire a firm to do testing of the noise after construction at the cost and expense of the turbine owner. We pulled that trigger. The Board of Health did, the Board of Selectmen did. The contract was awarded to this firm, Tech Environmental, who did the testing. Mr. Darty pointed out that some of the members of Epsilon had worked at Tech Environmental, and also actually some of the members at this other firm had worked at Tech Environmental. But it's an industry with engineers going back and forth based upon advancing their career and for whatever reason changing firms. So that didn't seem to be, for me, a deciding factor that because these are stamped engineers who have to do their job effectively, or they can be sued for having done their job in a biased way. So.
Yeah, the ratings that you gave them, superior and adequate, was that your group's ratings?
That was my rating I rated all the firms on that criterion.
Some sort of
scoreboard? On met the requirements, exceeded the requirements, or failed to meet the requirements.
Okay. But that's our internal.
Yeah, and I have that if you like that.
No, it sounds like you did a very thorough job. Have either of these firms done anything like this, or is this kind of off the radar in terms of what these firms do?
No. Epsilon in particular has done this, has been hired by the DEP to do this same testing.
In other communities?
In Massachusetts communities.
Okay.
Right.
Just to follow up on Tony, just made me think, through some of that evaluation that Epsilon has conducted in the other communities, have they found, what do I want to say? Inadequacies with the turbines that are causing the sound to be?
I don't have the data, I'm sorry. I can check if you'd like.
I guess that was a far-fetched question, but I'm
No,
just curious.
it's a good question.
Hold on, Mr. Darty.
It's a good question, but I just, I didn't ask for what the results of the testing that
Yeah,
they
no,
did.
that's fair, I was just curious.
So I got a question now. The testing, assuming that the board were to take Epsilon, when do they start?
They will start within the month to begin coming out to establish where are the sites that we would like to do this testing. Mr. Darty has agreed earlier to help find locations of areas where there seem to be the greatest impact, help us meet with the neighbors. Anyways, I'll get to the answer to your question shortly. And then it will take some time to determine exactly when the wind conditions exist to go out and do the testing at night. And they will use their own meteorologists to determine, okay, coming up this week is a high likelihood that on Thursday there will be this wind condition. And up until sometime in the afternoon on Thursday, they may call it off at no cost to us. But if they get out there and indeed the wind conditions don't materialize, we may be on the cuff for an additional test. It's kind of complicated getting those wind conditions at that far in advance. But that, John, that will determine upon when those conditions are presenting themselves, but they're ready to start the work.
So the reason why I'm asking is, so what's the duration then, if they get started, say, within the month? How long are they doing this?
It could take all summer long.
That leads me to the other question, which is, if we're already going to be shutting down the turbine at optimum location, based upon 2 or 3 years ago, then doesn't that skew, or at least create problems for the testing to try to find out the worst timing? And the reason why I'm asking is because my recollection from last October was that we were not just looking at shutting it down from the prior optimum times, but we were thinking of maybe shifting it from the northwest to south.
A broader
to
region, right.
cover
Yes.
a broader area,
Right.
which is one of the questions that
Right.
I know Mr. Doherty didn't ask, but that's what triggered my thought
Right.
process, which is
Yes.
the whole summer, which gets me to, if we're doing the testing now, wouldn't it be optimum to do it when we, in October or November, to be able to do it, because now the windows are closed, and now we can really get the wind and test it with these moderate.
We'll form our team and get those questions answered, and that team will consist of.
I just don't want to waste like
Well, no,
4
no.
or 5 months
Oh, yeah.
testing something
No.
when it's being shut
Yeah.
down, and then we have a skewed report.
A couple thoughts on your point. One is that in order to do this testing, Scituate Wind has to work with us, and they fully agree to do this. So what they will do is, when the testing occurs, they will be at the controls in communication with the testers to say, okay, the turbine is on now, the turbine is off now. So they would stop that stopping, if you will, if that was when we wanted to test. My area of competence in this is such that I'm going to have to rely upon the acoustical firm, Scituate Wind, and the neighborhood to determine that this is how we want to proceed. So that's why I'm a little bit this way on how long will it take, because it does take on when will those wind conditions exist. If they do exist this summer, then Scituate Wind would be a party to letting it run so we can do the testing then.
Well, I just want to make sure that, I understand that, but let's make sure that the neighbors understand that it's not getting turned off at the times that we had agreed to run the testing, because I just want to make sure everyone's on the same page here, because it sounds like we're going to have to run it, maybe, potentially,
Yes.
sometimes when we've mitigated it to be turned off.
Yes.
Just to understand the level of noise.
Exactly.
So we just need to make sure that Mr. Doherty and his neighbors are completely, fully aware of all that, so we don't get accused of not holding up our end of the bargain of mitigating the wind
Absolutely.
turbine during
Right.
those times. Yeah.
So I think the best way to go forward is, once we get the firm on board, is that we'll get that group together, and we'll work out how we want to proceed, and the timeline, and the conditions, and complete understanding, and how do we communicate with the residents, as well as what Scituate Wind's role is. They have to be a partner in this, or else we won't be able to do the testing.
Al, how many samples do we do? When you just spoke a minute ago, I got the sense that they were only gonna hit that condition once. So 4.
4
So
nights.
they're gonna try and find 4
Right.
events that hit those conditions, and then
Yes.
they'll,
Yes.
and that's
Right.
industry
And we can
standard.
ask for more, but then we have to pay. This amount covers the development, 4 nights, the analysis, and the report on those. If there's,
Does that kind of give us some wiggle room? So if we only got 3 good samples, then that would be enough to?
yes, right.
I was going to say, and again, I forgot from October, when the weather conditions, when are they the optimal for the noise, the issue of the noise? Is it the summer, or was it the fall, or the spring? I can't, when we're anticipating the...
Optimal in terms of
western wind,
highest, most offensive.
Or it's like the whole
Yeah.
West, yeah.
I forgot.
May I ask Dave, I think the conditions that we were looking at initially were southwesterly winds, basically blowing from the turbine towards Third Cliff, of 10 miles an hour or so. Subsequently, there was some concern that it's a broader than just southwest winds. It includes from basically southerly winds to almost northwesterly winds, a wider band. In that 10 to 15 mile an hour range, that's when the noise is most offensive.
Time of year is what I'm thinking, like, when was the most incidences of...
It seemed to be in the summer in the past, because windows are open, the higher winds are less of an issue than the softer winds. Softer winds are more of a noise issue because the noise appears to carry. So I think summer was the issue in the past, but again, I defer to the neighbors a little bit on that.
I'm going to open it up. Any other questions to the audience?
I just had one other question. So, outside the times when it's going to be shut down, anyway, or may not be tested, this company is available 24 hours. So if it happens at night,
Yes.
how someone's nearby, they have somebody or people have to physically come out. And that's all part of your.
Yeah, they physically come out. First of all, we establish where these sites are going to be, get the agreement for the landowners, et cetera, work out the timing and the communications with Scituate Wind, and then they will come out, they'll monitor that, alert us, get agreement that this is the right set of conditions, and then come out. And they'll be here in the middle of the night doing the testing. Scituate Wind will have to be awake, have their control center online.
Okay.
We may have someone from the town there too, maybe a resident or two will participate.
Great.
But it's attended monitoring to ensure that you don't get cars going by creating a large, a motorcycle group coming through the middle of the night, or silly things like that. But I mean, it's called attended monitoring. That's why it's so expensive, so that you get on and off conditions with comparable background noise.
All right. Open up to the audience. Mr. Darty, if I could ask you to wait one, I'll let the young lady up on the right-hand side. She had her hand up first, and she hasn't had a chance to speak. If you could please identify yourself loudly so that we can get it on. Your name and address, please.
Phyllis Carlberg, 26 Hughes Road.
Thank you, Ms. Carlberg.
As someone that listens to this at least 2 to 3 nights a week, year-round, I would like to make sure that one of those monitors goes on my house so that you understand what people are actually listening to, because it's very unpleasant. And if that doesn't seem to work, I'm working on another little project that you guys will all get to experience. So let's make sure that this testing does it right, so that you all understand what we put up with out there. Thank you.
Mr. Darty.
First, I want to answer the question to ask Mr. Banger about what wind direction and what criteria affects people the most. The wind, whatever direction the wind blows from, could affect somebody if they live downwind of it. It's just that the criteria that they say southwest to 10 miles per hour or less was most of the complaints came in from there, probably because I'm the most vocal and I live in that cone of activity. But people down on Collier Road and everything, they get affected from a different wind, but maybe they don't complain as much because they gave up, you know. So effectively, you could look at the conditions of the wind shear when it's quiet on ground level, but there's enough wind up at the level of 250 feet where the center of the turbine is, to make that thing generate like 60% of its power, but yet it's quiet down below. Depending on whatever, it could be any direction, but they always take the places where most of the complaints came from, because that's the obvious thing to do. What I'm just trying to say is, just because you fix something in the southwest direction doesn't mean that you've taken care of it in all directions, because you can create those same conditions depending on what direction the wind blows. Now back on Mr. Banger's recommendation to use Epsilon in lieu of Centec. Both principals of those companies, they have a Robert O'Neill in Epsilon, who's been around a lot longer in the sense that he's worked more in the field, he's more connected with the DEP, with the CEC, with the Center for he's kind of familiar with the CEC is in Boston. They're funded directly from the money that comes from your electric bill. Everybody's assessed that, and they have granted that money and they work off of that, and they give money to wind turbine operators to develop wind turbines. And Robert O'Neill is very much in tune with that group. He's been in the forefront of it. He always seems to go where things happen. So he's got a vast amount of experience, I grant you that. But unfortunately, it's always been in the development of wind turbines. I've never, as a matter of fact, he put Peter McPhee, who's a director over at the CEC, as one of his recommendations in his proposal. And Peter McPhee is wired for promotion of turbines. He gives out grants of our money to wind turbine operators. Now, the other company, Acentec, is headed up by a guy by the name of Mike Betharian, who used to be with noise engineering up in Bellrica. And Mike has been always more primarily testing, kind of apolitical. But both Mike Betharian and Rob O'Neill sat on the WindTag committee with Al Bangert when the DEP convened some study of how do we modify the DEP regulations, noise regulations, to take into account the unique noise for wind turbines. So they're all professionals and they all know what's going on. But Mike has never gotten politically wired in. He's never gone to work for the CEC or work for the DEP or been sent out on a project by the DEP. But he's taken wind testings from different communities like Kingston, and he has found in his testing areas where there have been infractions to the DEP noise regulation, in Kingston in particular. I've never found anything where Epsilon or Rob O'Neill has found any problems with wind. He's very, very good, got great credentials, but he always seems to be finding positives. Whereas Mike seems to go across the clock. He supports him or he finds something wrong, he points it out. I've had conversations with Mike Betharian. I've met Mr. O'Neill. And I also have quotes by Mr. O'Neill saying he doesn't believe in infrasound, he doesn't believe in this. He seems to have a preconceived feeling in his heart. I think he's how do I put this?
He's biased, is basically what you're saying.
No, I'm not trying to say that.
I'm just cutting to the chase because I'm sitting here going, you can hire engineers, and maybe sometimes they get hired by corporations. The fact they're hired by corporations doesn't mean that when they do their job, that they're going to be tainted because they're going to only be looking for the big business or the big contractors because they can do things for the smaller people. People can say that about judges. They come out of big law firms. Guess what? They're only going to help the big law firms and not help the small plaintiffs' attorneys that they're dealing with. It comes to the person. It comes to whether or not they have integrity. And I think all I'm trying to say, Mr. Doherty, is that you may not agree with Mr. O'Neill. I think the reality is this. Mr. O'Neill and his company, if this board decides, is getting hired by the town, not by anybody else. And I'm more interested in knowing, like, okay, how many incidences are we looking for? 2 or 3? I actually think we should have more. How many monitoring, I forget what they call them, but poles, that you're going to be, devices you're going to be putting around? Other than 2 or 3, I think they need 3 in order to triangulate. I'm like, no, I'm happy to think about putting maybe Phyllis's house. But I mean, my point is, I think it's important that we get a bigger idea and try to figure this timing. And the other thing I think is important is, what's the maximum, the optimum time? Now, I really would hate to say let's do it during the summer, because you're going to hear it. But the bigger question is, if that's the optimum time, let's get the testing done and let's get it done right. And if it means putting it on, I don't want it for 3. I want it not for 4. I'd like to have 5 or 6, so we have a really good report and not just basically say DEP says this or that. I want to know exactly the incidences of how bad it is. I know you're also saying it's noise. There's no doubt it makes a noise. And where's it going to carry? It could be heard under this condition, that condition. Clearly, it's a bad condition that you hear from southwest, south to northwest. And I want to make sure that we figure that out. It could be different for Phyllis, for all I know. I don't know. But we need to know that. And I think we need to know the optimum time. And, you know, my feeling was not to do it during the summer. But if that's the optimum time, then I think I'd like to know from the neighbors, open the windows, call us, let's get this thing figured out. Because I don't want a skewed report. And I don't want to start skewing it by saying, because I don't think Mr. O'Neill's going to be honest with us or he's biased. I'd rather just say, no, they're being hired by us. And I think Al's correct in the sense that, you know, most people have integrity, and once they put their stamp on it, as an engineer or a licensed land surveyor, they have to do it. I know you're laughing, But I know you're one. I don't think you would put your stamp down on something and say you disagree.
I've known professional engineers that don't have any integrity.
Okay, but and I'm not saying that. You're laughing and saying that maybe other people are. I don't think so. I think the fact of the matter is, when we're hiring them, they're being hired by us.
Naive
And
if
if
you
they're,
think every professional engineer has integrity.
well, there has to be a trust factor, Mr. Darty, when you do something. And if you can't trust somebody without, excuse me.
I did.
Well, there has to be a trust factor. And if you're not going to trust this process right now, that's going to be a problem. Because I want to know the optimum numbers. I want to know it.
Is just as qualified, and the community group likes him better. That's all.
Actually,
Tony?
Did you have something?
I was just going to say that the Epsilon has demonstrated significant wind turbine noise monitoring experience in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Iowa, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Colorado, Illinois, Canada, Pennsylvania, I think it said that, in North Dakota. With here where we did. So they have demonstrated noise testing, field noise testing of wind turbines. Both are registered engineering firms. Neither, do I assume, is biased, because they have fiduciary responsibility to us if we hire them. And Epsilon has more demonstrated experience than Accentech. Accentech's background is more in submarine propeller design and noise and vibration analysis resulting from that. That has really good experience in those areas. It's a different area of engineering. They're definitely moving in, and I'm sure will be qualified in the area of wind testing. Epsilon is to me, would be the go-to firm in terms of experience in this field. And it's about the same amount of money, so.
Tony and then Sean?
Yeah, I just want to kind of reiterate what John just said. I think we have to go in with the assumption that neither firm is corrupt. It's science that we're dealing with. They're measuring sound with the same devices, and I'm going to have to assume if it's 3.1, they're not going to write down 1.3. And I think we have to make that assumption going into it. It's, I think I speak for the board. I hope to God that there is a violation here. I hope that this thing is way above the standards, because this is, it's a very difficult task, because we all know people that are your neighbors that don't hear a thing. And it's a very difficult thing to kind of figure out. And my fear is that we find that it is under the standards, and you both still have this problem, and then I don't know where we go from there. So I'm praying that it's above these standards, and that somehow we can go and have them oil this windmill or whatever they do to make the sound go away. I've been up there a dozen times and listened, and I mean, we've spoken a lot over the summer. But I think we have to take these firms at their professional integrity, and I think we have to assume that they're going to monitor it with the same devices and truthfully give us what whatever the devices say. And hopefully we'll get some sort of resolution, because I really don't know what to do in this case, because it's very strange how, you can't sleep at night and the guy 2 houses over doesn't even know it's on. So, again, I think we've got to go with the firms. Maybe Al's gone through a thorough process to figure out how they should be rated, and I just hope they do a quick job. That's the one other thing I want to mention. Putting it off from the summer sounds good, because we can keep it closed, but they still hear it apparently anyways. But it would just delay it for another 3, 4, 5, 6 months. So I think the sooner we can do it on 4 events, as long as we communicate it well, that says, okay, on the 5th, it's going to be running when it probably shouldn't be, then hopefully we can get the results quicker and get any repairs we need done quicker.
Sean?
Al, did Accentech have a list of states and areas where they've worked, like you just listed
No,
off?
they have a list of references, but they didn't list where they had done testing.
All right. I didn't think you had said any.
The only thing
Both these firms are significantly more expensive than the other two that have applied to. The other two were in the $30,000 range, but they had even less experience in my mind.
So you feel you get...
So we're not buying a cheap firm here.
Right. You get what you're paying for. You feel.
We're paying big bucks.
What I'm curious is that, let's assume that, the decibels from DEP have a certain level, okay, triggers a violation. I'm actually really more concerned about the decibels that hit just barely. Maybe they're just under it, and how often, because to me, even though maybe it's not technically in violation, it's so close enough that it spurs a lot of phone calls because people are hearing it. And to me, I think that's as important, because that's when I'm looking at it saying, maybe it's not cognizable to some people, they can't hear it, but other people are much more sensitive and they can. And I think, to me, that's really relevant from my standpoint. So I know I'm a little nervous about like 3 or 4 times, but I'm like, I kind of want to know, are they going to give us information, not just when it's in violation, but when it's really close to it, to see if it compares to the phone calls?
Yes, and well, the report will have draft after draft of what they found during the testing. The testing is not just to go out and test it like this. It's actually, they spend 3 or 4 hours out there with on 10-minute segments, off 10-minute segments, on, off, on, off. So, and then they'll do it 3 other nights. And we can ask that they do it additional nights. If we find that we're not getting good data, we may have to pay for some more.
I think we should think about paying for more and more monitoring devices so that we get a good spectrum.
All right.
I think one last thought is, I think that it's going to be great that the neighbors know the night that they're doing it, because you're going to know whether it was impacting you. So Tuesday night, was it a bad night? Was it not a bad night? And if you're saying they measured on a night when I couldn't hear anything, then that'd be interesting feedback.
Mr. Doherty, and then I'm going to move on. Go ahead.
Can't say anything else?
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm going to give you a chance to speak, and then I got to move on.
2 things. Mr. Nettie, you talked about if you find the things out of compliance, you're not going to shut it down. The wind turbine operator will try to mitigate, saying, okay, under that condition, when the wind is from that exact direction, at that speed, we'll shut it off. So you may be going to take out one complaint, but you're still going to have the spectrum of everybody else around. I'm just saying, don't expect too much. If you do find a violation, the wind turbine operator is not going to say, okay, we'll shut it down. That's not what they do. And the other thing is, back to the principles of Epsilon and the Centec. Rob O'Neill has been an advocate. He's talked about this many, many times about he's a big man on averaging. He doesn't take the difference from L90 to Lmax like DEP says. He likes to average it in between. It cuts out the spikes, which is the AM, the amplitude modulation, the whoosh, 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 that bothers us. He likes to average it. And that's another way that, you say, well, he's a professional. He can interpret it the way he wants.
Something to keep an eye out for.
And that's why you're going to have to carefully look at this. And I might come back and say, hey, he averaged. He didn't take L90 or Lmax. Whereas Mike Batarian looks at it the way the DEP says specifically. You take L90, the sound is you get 90% of the time, and you take Lmax, the spikes in there.
All right, well,
That's a great case we can.
what we're going to do is this. When we deal with whoever we're going to hire, we're going to make sure that we're not looking for averages. We want to know exactly what it is.
Right.
And that way we'll know if it's spiked without an average.
I've asked also that the data that he's taking is going to have a continuous recorder going. That we get the data back to us across the clock, and also with the SCADA data, or the corresponding SCADA data, what's being recorded.
So I will tell you this. We will get you the data. I don't know if it can be contemporaneous, but whatever time it can be, we'll make sure you get it.
We will own the data, and the methodology is going to be the one that the DEP requires,
So
and the
whatever it
report
is,
will have all
what I'm
everything
saying
in it.
is more than happy to give it to you. It's just, I'm not sure the timing, whether it can be that day. If it can be, you got it. If it's going to take a day or two, we'll get it to you. That's a reasonable expectation. All right. Well, let's get a motion. Is there a motion?
Move the Board of Selectmen vote to award the contract for the wind turbine acoustical study contract 18-WT-01 to Epsilon Associates of Maynard, Mass. in the amount of $50,000 for the scope of work as specified in their response to request proposal dated April 25th, 2018.
Motion by Mr. Harris, second by Ms. Curran. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous vote. All right.
Al, thank you.
Thank you, Al. And if you could let us know when whatever the meeting is, when you're going to be meeting, that would be great.
I'll be glad to have one of you be liaison.
That'd be great. And we can do it. And then when we have a meeting, people can come But I think that would be very helpful, all right?
Thanks, Al.
Thank you very much. Going to move on now to the next item, which happens to be a discussion, Old Gate School. Doug Smith, Historical Commission, come on up. Chairman. Chairman, it's good to see you. Just to let you know, this was a request by Maura Curran, who wanted to meet with you. Unfortunately, we weren't able to schedule it until this meeting, but I just wanted to at least, also, I mentioned this when I was at the last commission hearing in April, saying that, you know, the board wanted to talk to you about Gates School, the significance, historical, you know, like recognition, to kind of talk about it. And I also just want to at least set the tone that one of the things that I would like to see, if it's possible, is there some section of the main building itself that could be utilized at some point, and I think it's a cost question of whether it has a value. That's not from the Historical Commission.
Right.
But we want to know, at least from Historical Commission, you know, the view, if that's okay.
Sure. So I did send along a memo. I'm not sure if you got it. It probably came late
Just got
today.
it,
So
yeah.
I'll try to summarize it as best I can, but I would encourage you
Is
to.
this something you can put on the website, or we can have put on the website? It's a great memo, and it shows a lot of great historical pictures and talks about it, which I think is really nice.
I'll try to summarize it as best I can, but I do want to leave time for questions that we can go through. So the initial research that was done on the Gates School was actually done in 2010, 2011. There was a CPC application that was submitted to do a feasibility and facility analysis of the Gates School. So in order to receive funding through CPC, it had to be determined that that's historical significance. So that has not changed dramatically from what the commission found in 2010, 2011. The big question was what section would be considered historic? And if you look in the picture, it's sort of that square block. This must have been a picture that was taken from Lawson Tower. And that was the section of the school that was built in 1917. The angular roof and spire, and then the auditorium to the right of that, it's the second picture, was built in 1931. And then finally, I was calling it the B wing, but I believe people are calling the A wing the B wing now, and the B wing the A wing, whatever. Is where the gym is the best description. That was in the late 1940s, and finally the C wing, which is that part that's falling down to the right, was built in the late 1950s. So through some research, we were really trying to determine who the architects were. And through our research, it was a firm called McLaughlin and Burr of Boston. And they also did the expansion in 1948. They have several buildings that are listed on the National Register of Historic Places, notably Walpole High School. It's considered a colonial revival style. The Clinton Armory, Norwood State Armory, Weymouth Town Hall. So they have a number of buildings that they designed in this similar colonial brick style that have received National Register listing. But that really doesn't mean a lot, and I wanted to talk about that in a minute. So the other thing that's happened to Gates is it's gone through something in historic preservation world known as muddling. So through its renovations and renovations, not restorations, over the years, it's lost a lot of its historic significance in the interior. I mean, the windows were all taken out, the original windows, and I think that was in the renovation in 1974. And then the old auditorium that was kind of split up into different sections when Sean and I were there, I think, in the early 70s, right? And that was, so there were a lot of changes done inside. That's the term muddling. So it's hard to determine what looks historic on the inside of the building. The second piece that was interested, there was a lot of questions about National Register listing, and you can read about that, but it's a common misconception that a building that is on a National Register listing is exempt from demolition. That's not the case. It offers no protection whatsoever. So anything that's on the National Register in the town of Scituate is really unprotected. And a lot of people have that misconception that that status gives it significance. It's historically significant, but it's not protected.
Not protected. That's interesting.
So that was a big question. But the key consideration for this building, when we were looking at it, is its setting. So the Gates School is really located near several important historic resources in town. You think about it, you have the Cudworth House, Lawson Tower, Little Red Schoolhouse, the Cudworth Cemetery, Lawson Common, and the Unitarian Church, which is on the National Register, along with Lawson Tower. So its setting is what makes it historic. It's kind of like the building itself, through its series of additions and muddling, is less historic. So that's sort of the dilemma that you sort of, when you're looking at it. So I think what's important, whatever the future is, and I'm not here to debate the merits of the senior center at all, but whatever is put there, it's in such a historically significant piece of town, you'd have to be very careful, or it's just going to look completely out of place.
Right.
So that's one thing. And then the final question I was asked, and you can read all about, there was a question about historic districts in town.
Right.
There's 27 identified, but they're not local historic districts or national historic districts. That's on page 4. I'd suggest you just read that in detail, and I can follow up with you about that. It's important to have these identified, especially when there's a project that involves federal funding, because it triggers something called a Section 106 review. And that was the restoration of the Greenbush Rail, which is the reason that the town of Scituate got millions of dollars in historic mitigation funds, because of those assets. Another example is the Tilden Road cell phone tower. So instead of putting a cell phone tower like the one right out the window over here, a monopole had to go there, which is much less noticeable just due to the historic assets. So when you trigger anything federal with funding or licensing, it's important to know what you have in your inventory. So that's what that was about. And that's actually why we're doing additional surveying work that was just approved at town meeting recently. And so finally, what restrictions does the town have in tearing down or renovation of the historic portions of the Gates School? You would have to comply with the Town of Scituate demolition review bylaw.
So the building would apply to that bylaw?
Yes.
Okay.
The middle section.
The center portion,
Yeah,
right.
1960.
Okay, okay. That was really one of my larger concerns, so Doug, thanks for clarifying that.
Yep.
And then also, I guess, I'm sorry, I jumped in here.
Go right ahead.
But, so you've answered both questions, really. Since it's designated as historically relevant, it could qualify for CPC funding.
It would take what I would
Or
suggest.
just that piece,
That
if you will.
piece,
Okay.
and what in that piece would be
Okay,
considered
okay,
historically significant. So I would say it would take the skill set of an architectural historian or somebody who is an architect who has a lot of experience with historic renovation to kind of walk through that building
Okay.
and identify pieces or parts
just need to make sure we have one of those.
instead of just a block chunk of money to say we're just going to restore that. Because if you're restoring it versus renovating it, I would caution you. You really have to think about that, because restoration expenses can be much greater than renovation expenses.
Right,
There's a difference.
Yep. Yep.
If you think about it.
Yeah, restoration is bring it back to some of
The way
its
it was.
former way it
Right.
was,
Yeah.
right. Okay,
Like the cost.
yeah.
Questions from the board, Tony? No. Karen?
No, thank you so much for this
Okay.
background.
Why don't you take a look at that, and then we can talk about it more if you like. Sorry it was
No,
late.
no, it's fine. You clarified the two big questions that I had that I also wanted just to have out there publicly as well, so folks knew that, we were looking into this because we want to retain as much as we can if possible, and it's good to know how to move forward, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Doug.
Questions from the audience, anybody? Ms. Hunt?
Andrea Hunt, 66 Man Lot. Get back to what Mr. Smith said about the National Registry. It does, he's telling the truth in that it does not protect it from being demolished, which is up to the town to do. However, if a section is registered, especially with the Massachusetts State Historical Commission, which would have to be done before it went to the National Registry. Massachusetts can provide grants and funds, and sometimes that matching is up to, it is matching funds. So whatever we look into it, they will match for restoration. So in looking at the cost of restoring or renovating, if it was registered with the Massachusetts Historical Commission, there would be a good possibility for grants. I was also told that the Massachusetts Historical Commission, that if you are in a position where you're trying to make a decision on demolishing a building of historical significance, that they put you to the top of the list. in an attempt to save that historic building. And the only other question that I had was, in looking at the architect who is doing the study for the possible senior center and/or the demolition, whatever he's doing, is he going to be tasked with giving us an option for saving that middle part of the building, or at least the facade of it, or is he tasked with only the demolition and building of the new senior center?
So correct me, Jim, if I'm wrong, actually, we're tasking them to take a look at demoing the entire building with a senior center, and to see if it's possible to just retain the center section, and to see if there is something that could work into possibly usage of it, or the facade itself. I think that's, we're looking at to try to figure out if there's a way of dovetailing a portion of the old one into it. But again, right now, we just picked them, and that's what I was curious about, to see if there's any way that there could be a use of the original 1916 building. There's 6 classrooms. So the question is whether or not they can be used as offices but building behind that would be, a brand-new facility in conjunction with it. Or just keep the facade, so at least we have that grand look when you come into the Cudworth area.
And after speaking with CPC, I was pretty much told that because the Scituate Commission, Historical Commission, had said that there was some historical significance, that CPC funds could be used. Certainly for
that part of the building.
Yeah, I think you gotta, well,
center part of the building.
I'll respond to a question, but
Okay.
Did you want to?
I think you got to be careful. I mean, I think you really have to identify, it's gone through a lot of renovations over the years, and I'm not sure exactly what's left, so if you want to bring that back, sitting on the other side, on the CPC side, they're going to want to know that it's for historical preservation.
I mean, if you really brought it back, I'm not saying,
Yeah.
I'm just saying, if you really take the original building and say, we're going to restore it, you're going to have a flat roof, you're going to have no columns out front, it's going to be windows, because that's restoring it to the way it looked in 1916, up until they renovated it in 1931, 32, to put the columns and that
They
faux
put the roof on
roof
it.
on it. Yeah.
But to get historic significance, it only has to be 50 years. So the renovations that were done in the 1930s can still...
Heck, we could keep the old sea wing. That's historic. So that's what I'm saying.
It would be.
All right, well, let's, any other questions? Anybody? Mr. Price?
Bruce Price, 48 Kellogg Road. Through you, Mr. Chairman. Doug, do you know about the square footage of that piece that you're saying has some historical significance?
I don't know off the top of my head, but it was part of the analysis that was done by Durkee, Brown, Viveros, and Wernfeld. So they broke each section of the building up and did it by square footage. So you have to look at that carefully.
I can get the answer for you, go
Yeah,
ahead.
it's
I was
online.
curious
It's
myself
available
about it.
online.
Because I'm curious to see. Again, don't get the impression this is the senior center. It's just a question of whether or not it could be some use incorporated with the main building and protecting it.
I will also caution you too, demolition is expensive. So if that has to be added to the cost of the project.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, what, $150,000 to tear down the police station, right? So it's something to think about as an alternative, that if you were preserving part of it and you weren't paying for that demolition piece,
Right.
it may be helpful.
Absolutely.
Well, Doug, thank you very much for coming in. Happy to have the commission come back again. Actually, the other thing I want to point out is you had the link to other, the 1,000 documented historical buildings that you can find in Scituate. That's a great link that people should
Yes.
take a look at.
Yep.
We'll make sure we get this up online, because I think it's a really nice memo, but it's also great for people to investigate their town and see things, so.
All right, thanks.
Thank
Have
you
a good
very
night.
much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
John, one last comment on that. Just so that people know that if it does have to be demolished, we've talked about having the rebuild have the characteristics of the way that it looked now and back then also. So, so we want to keep the historical significance of the area. It just may be new wood instead of old wood.
Kevin, Sean, I think you're up next. Gentlemen, we're looking at, let's see, I think the first is a discussion vote, First Herring Brook Reservoir Dam, Phase 3. Sean, good evening. It's
Chairman.
good to see you.
What?
So we're,
With me tonight also is Tom Cook, who has been working on this project
Tom,
since
come
the
on up.
beginning.
Come on up.
From Tetra Tech.
Yeah.
Who we're looking to award this contract to. This started, or Al started chasing this, 4 or 5 years ago now. Improvements to the spillway at the reservoir dam and the fish ladder at the reservoir. They've completed the 60% design, had filed with the local conservation commission, and an initial MIPA filing. This contract would award Phase 3, which will be funded with a grant from the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs from their dam and levee program.
Good.
This would bring the project to 90% design and bid document preparation to go out to bid. They did apply for a second grant when they received this one, although the state was a little reluctant because we weren't at that bidding stage yet to award us the construction money. So we'll go back through that phase once we get to that point. So this will take another probably year.
Yeah, this contract will,
2019.
June 30th, that's that.
So it'll increase the storage of the reservoir by 1.5 feet, which they estimate to be about 28 days, and improve fish passage, both in the spring and the fall, by lowering the entrance and exit.
so we're looking hopefully to have that completed and after the fourth, I say phase in 2019, or would it be 2020 that we'd have it all completed to be able to?
Construction
Yep.
would, if permitting goes well through the state, there's quite a few agencies involved, marine fisheries, the environmental notification with the state.
Yep.
It's quite a few, so hopefully, as long as all that stays on track, I don't know if you anticipate
We
delays.
basically have to prepare an environmental impact report
Yep.
as part of the environmental notification form requirements, and we have to get that done by June 30th, 2019.
Okay, so probably
Hopefully, we can do it quicker, but I'm not optimistic.
not with the state, but I can imagine, so maybe 2020, we might be looking
right.
at trying to elevate that. Good.
And typically, the grant applications go in the fall.
Yep.
By end of September. So probably, if we apply for a grant in August, September 2019, and hopefully get construction started in
Good.
2020.
2020. Question, Sean?
Yeah, could you, Tom, explain, because I think I spoke on the article to increase the reservoir by 1.5 feet, gives us another 30 days of capacity. That's great. Then the second part of this is the herring run. So what are you making the ladder have more steps in it? Or I don't understand how that works. So you're raising the reservoir and lowering the fish ladder, so.
Well, it's complicated.
All right. Okay.
Right now, the spillway crest is at a specific elevation.
Right.
The existing fishway, the bottom of the channel that goes into the reservoir is at the same elevation. So whenever the water level is below the spillway crest, there's no flow in the ladder.
Right.
So what happens is, in the spring, fish can get in there, into the reservoir, because water's spilling over, there's water going down the ladder. In the fall, the water level's well below.
Pick it up.
It can be well below, as you know. So out migrants can't get it to the ladder.
Okay.
So what we're doing is, we're modifying the spillway. We're going to put a gate on the spillway, and we're going to actually lower the crest of the spillway, which will give you more flood capacity to meet off the dam safety regulations. So there have to be spillway improvements to the dam for dam safety issues anyway. What we're doing is combining this, we're going to put a gate on there. So what it'll do, that gate will allow us to hold the water 1.5 feet higher than the spillway crest. And it'll hold that for a longer period of time. So when it rains, this gate will go down and this water level will stay. So only, when it goes all the way down, most of the time there'll still be water in the reservoir. I think it's maybe only 3 feet lower than the existing spillway crest, so it won't go down anywhere near the levels that you've experienced in the last couple of years.
Good.
So that's what the plan is.
Karen?
So, I know in the past, in the spring, we have to release a lot of water to comply with the herring runs and DEP. So this reconfiguration, will that reduce the amount of release we'll have to do?
No,
No?
what this does is this provides additional storage for water supply, drinking water supply. Additional storage for your environmental flow releases. Right now, there's a certain, for aquatic habitat, you've got to release a certain amount of water throughout the year, throughout different portions of the year. And this will provide enough water so that most of the years, there'll be sufficient water in the fall when the out migrants, the herring, are going out, for them to go out through the ladder and down that way. So basically, it's a threefold. It's aquatic habitat, it's water supply, and it's fish passage.
Thank you.
Any questions? Motion?
Just one
Yeah, go
interesting,
ahead.
so the gate is gonna hold it back, but what about the rest of the perimeter of the pond? Is that just gonna go back into the forest a little bit deeper, or is there
Yes.
no other low point?
Yes, we've done an extensive study on that. Basically, it'll be, the water, normal pool will now be 1.5 feet higher than the current spillway level. The current spillway level is your normal pool now, but it's not really normal, because once it stops raining, that goes down, 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 down until it rains. So what we're trying to do is hold the water up higher, so there is some wetlands that are going to be flooded a little bit longer.
Right.
But they're flooded now anyway. This new level is below the flood level in the pond. So these levels are experienced currently with that fixed spillway crest.
So we're not gonna flood somebody's backyard that hasn't.
No, we've done an extensive study on on the extent of this and where the new water level is. It's mostly on town property. Okay?
Motion?
So Chairman, Sean, the amount's 182,309?
I was
259.
I was going to state that, you're correct.
What's the
It
amount?
should be 182,309. Not 259, 296.
That was the total.
So if
Okay.
somebody moves, the Board of Selectmen to award the reservoir design and permitting contract to Tetra Tech in the amount of $182,309.
So moved?
So moved by Mr. Harris, seconded by
Second.
Mr. Vignani. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Mr. Cook, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you again next year for the final phase, so.
Yeah, great
I
job.
hope we see you before that.
Yes.
Good.
Thank you.
Sean, you're still up here. We've got a Mack truck, huh? Kevin, you're joining them?
I'm joining them.
All right.
I figured it'd be too crowded if we all came up at once.
Let's hit this Mack truck. This is something that we had at town meeting,
Yes.
and I'm going to defer to Sean on this one. Sean knows his trucks, so what do we got?
If you recall, at town meeting, we got funding to replace our 1993 Mack truck, Truck 17 with 140,000 miles on it.
I remember it.
And it's got 2 sections of frame that's cracked. So this is the replacement. We've been working with some of the different suppliers for a new Mack. We purchased a Mack a couple of years ago. We were dealing with Ballard Truck, and they were able to actually sell us a chassis at the same price we paid for the last Mack. And then we have some additional work that's going on to outfit the truck with the dump body, et cetera, and other miscellaneous stuff.
Sean, I defer, I'm asking.
Kevin sent me the spec sheet, I did look it over, it's kind of,
You've learned your lesson.
no,
All right, any questions?
looked at a few. No, and it just, we get the state pricing that, the private sector cannot get, so. Great.
All righty.
All right, motion?
Motion, please.
Move to award a contract to Ballard Truck Center for $167,877 for the replacement of the DPW Highway Division's 1993 International Six-Wheel Dump Truck number 1 through 7, or is it 17?
1-7.
1-7.
Yep.
with a 2019 Mack Granite 64 FR10 wheel dump truck.
Motion by Ms. Curran, seconded by
Second.
Ms. Canfield. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Gentlemen, thank you
Thank you
very
very
much.
Thank you.
Happy travels.
Ms. Linda,
Ms. Linda.
I was going to say,
Linda,
That'll do.
she'll like that.
Hayes. Ms. Hayes,
Hi.
sorry. I was going to say Canfield by
Okay.
mistake, and I'm like, I know that wasn't going to write.
It's
Linda, good evening.
ambiguous. Hi, how are you? Congratulations. Switch.
Why don't you say condolences to me then?
Well, I was gonna say
There you go.
congratulations to Mara, I
Congratulations,
was
there's got to be
saying.
something bad about this. So you're looking for a logo. I saw the logo. It was
Okay.
very well done.
Thank you. It was a process, and in the end, it came down to I did seek input, I did have some opinions and other ideas, but keeping it simple for the time being, something that, had maybe a more vibrant entity for us, to represent us and try to get some consistency and visibility and put it on all our print materials. We need some brochures. We obviously are trying to get out there and want people to recognize what we're doing in all its forms. So that was the impetus for it, and I think it's pretty. I like the hub, or the wheel, I should say, because it sort of represents the hub that we'd like to be for everyone.
Yep.
At some other point.
That's nice.
Yeah.
I interpret it that way, but I'm glad you explained
No,
that.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, the hub, the wheel.
Yeah.
There's
I
direction
just
in
thought
that
it was
too.
more from a nautical aspect.
It
That's where I
is.
was thinking, yeah.
And we went through some other iterations. We had a rope around at one point, but this is simple. And the starfish, sort of the nod to Scituate, just as a seacoast community. And I love the tagline, so there was one version where the tagline's in it, but it's a little bit hard to read when you reduce it, so then I pulled it
Oh, I
apart and
see
put
that.
that at the bottom. The com-
Commitment, connection, and community.
Community.
Nice. See that one?
Yeah.
So I think that represents, you
I didn't see the second one. I
Okay.
didn't scroll down.
I-
so
you know
thank
what, those
for
little
calling that
picture-
out.
I know.
No, but thanks for
Just
calling.
one,
I don't know if
isn't it?
anybody
Yeah, I
wants
thought
to-
that was good.
No, there's one that's without the.
And, may I ask a question?
Absolutely.
And you're undergoing this logo design change just basically for your print materials and whatnot to get out there? Is that?
Well, yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Print materials online, maybe giveaways if we did anything like that. I had done the banners for the parade. I wished I'd had it then. We could still put them on there. Volunteer badges I wanted to make up and have something nice to represent us. Jim, when I spoke to him, did tell me about Scituate, which I wasn't aware of, so I did meet with the town planner and the planning and development manager, and so I understand that now. I don't know where that will take us, or how the logo can be worked in with what they're doing, or whether we just need to restrict our use, but, it's, I think it remains to be seen how much and how we can use it, but for the most part, it is print, online, flyers, things that I want to put out there that would be consistently recognized.
Yep. Branding.
Branding.
You're doing. Yep.
Branding.
Questions from the board?
That was really my question. I love the design. I think it's really fresh, and I think you guys did a great job. My only question is, are we confusing with the branding that the town's doing in any way? And,
I don't know.
Yeah,
think so.
I don't-
It's more wayfaring, so
Mhm,
when you have
mhm.
Scituate, it's for more the
Mhm.
direction of tourists or people in generally, whereas
Right.
here,
Right.
this is your
Right.
own individual.
It is. Yep.
Entity,
Yep.
kind of like the DPW or water department saying they're branding with white trucks as opposed to blue trucks.
Right. I foresee it could be a little sketch of, the cupola or whatever the building sort of becomes. It certainly could take on more identity when we have one.
Picture of the Brook Street one, like a depression falling down Fire
The
Station.
brook, I thought about the brook.
Yeah, no, I think you guys did a great job.
So that's why I left it open a little bit, but yes, there could be so much more. So much more.
We're just reviewing that logo.
Right now,
How nice it looks.
I did print off pages for you if you wanted them in a bigger.
No, it looks great.
No, it looks great.
It was
Anybody-
Jane Norton designed it. She's done a lot for the chamber,
She is.
and she did the parade, so.
Any questions from the audience, anybody? Dr. Bryce?
Bryce, 48 Manlock Road. There's just another little piece of the pie, we're trying to inject some enthusiasm, awareness of what's going to be happening down the road in the months to come, so I think this is a good piece to add to that.
Yeah.
I like the nautical too aspect.
I'm glad.
That's nice.
I'm glad.
Just
Yeah,
a
it's
subtle,
nice
but
of
it's
him.
there, which is nice.
Great. Thank you.
Do you need a motion from us? I think you do.
I do.
I have a motion?
Move to accept the adoption of the new logo for the senior center to use for branding and marketing its programs and services.
Motion by Ms.
Second.
Canfield, seconded by Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
I
Unanimous.
appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Bye, Linda.
Going to move on now to a discussion of Whittles Walk HVAC contract. Ms. Holt, good evening and welcome. Finance Director for the town of Scituate.
So before you tonight, I have yet another contract, because it seems to be a theme that we're going with at tonight's meeting. This one is on behalf of Kevin Kelly, our Facilities Director. In 2017, the annual town meeting voted to replace the HVAC systems at Widows Walk Golf Course. That was for the golf clubhouse and for the maintenance building. The maintenance building was done last summer, and now it's the clubhouse's turn. It's a VRF HVAC system, which is a variable refrigerant volume. So I have my little blurb from Kevin, so I'm going to read it so I don't mess it up. It's a key component to the new HVAC system, as it will vary and control the refrigerant flow to each indoor unit according to the demand. It is more efficient than a typical HVAC system, which is usually on or off, and it will produce more comfort and savings. So if they need more flow in one room, they can direct it that way. It doesn't have to be sized by the room. They are going to save all of the split units that they currently have there, so if there's a potential reuse for them in another building. And they won't have to replace the ductwork, they're just going to be doing piping in the attic. So this particular contract was procured through Chapter 25A, which is the same chapter that we procure the ESCO through. It's with Energy Conservation, Inc. The total contract value is $62,590, excuse me, I'm transposing that, $65,294. So there is sufficient money left in the article to do that, and there would be a little left over after that.
Sean?
What manufacturers are they?
It's a 10-ton carrier heat pump variable refrigerant flow system.
That's good.
And it's a ductless system like we have now.
Yes.
How many different heads?
It's going to have 6 indoor air handlers, if that's what you mean by heads.
Like that?
I don't think it's that size. I believe
No,
they priced
no,
them out for ceiling units.
Right, right, all right. How many bids did we get, Nancy? I was looking for the backup and I didn't see.
He only did the one because he did it through 25A. He didn't do it through a sealed bid process. So 25A is the energy conservation procurement, is the statute, and he did it under, I think, Section 14, which calls for them to go out and find if they can produce a project under $100,000, they can go directly through this. So this is the same people who've been doing the ESCO contracts. So that was one of the questions I asked him, why he did it this way, and it was because they could do it under 25A, Section 14.
Doesn't make sense to me. I understand what you just said, but it just doesn't make.
It's within the purview of the board to not approve the contract and ask him to go through a regular bidding process on it if you prefer.
Well, when could this be done? And are they folks down there suffering, or the residents that use the?
I don't think anyone's suffering. I think that there was a reason why this particular project was brought forward as one of the first projects for the improvements at Widows Walk, because the system is not as robust as perhaps you would want it to be.
Well,
I don't believe it's at a failure point. It's not at the, it's at the, towards the end of its useful life.
You hit the nail right on the head. At that age, it's 20 years old now, so it is getting to be that age. And the SEER rating is the efficiency rating, so
Right,
that's what
so
you're
it's going from an 11 to
13.
an 18.
Well, you're right, there's a big jump there. I don't know, what's the total tonnage? You said 4 tons?
It's 10 ton.
All right, okay. I don't know how the rest of the board feels, I just would have liked to have seen some type of.
Bidding process?
Yes, it's.
I would have preferred it, but this is the avenue he went, and he is within the statute, so.
Can we hold it for 2 weeks?
Yeah, I have no problems with
Is
that.
that-
How long will it take
When you
you?
say he, are you talking about Bob?
No, Kevin Kelly.
Kevin Kelly.
The facilities director. He did it the same way he's been doing the other improvements that are energy-related. To him, this is an energy project rather than
We approved
just.
an overall contract for
Yeah,
ESCO
because
years ago, right?
Right, and this isn't part of the ESCO, but because of the improvements in the SEER rating, I don't know if I just said that acronym correctly or not,
Right.
from 11 to 18, it qualifies. So he used the same vendors he's been using on the ESCO project. It's energy conservation rather than Amoresco.
And this is coming out of the enterprise fund, right?
Yes, this is a project that's already been funded by Widows Walk.
Yeah, I mean, if it can be cheaper.
Seems expensive.
It's pretty straightforward, unless I'm missing something. I haven't been up, through the whole building. It just,
We can certainly bring it back to you. It will not be in 2 weeks. This is at a level that will require a sealed bid, so it won't come back to you for probably 4 to 6 weeks.
or if I had more backup and saw some of the backup, then I might recommend to you, John, that you put it on in 2 weeks and it could get done.
Let me have you talk to Catherine directly if you want.
Okay,
All right.
if that's all right.
Let's do that, and no offense.
And it's
4 to 6
working,
weeks.
it's not like
already
it's.
Why it
working,
comes
you know what, we can
before
do
you
it
for
again.
your discussion.
Plus, it gets me to, I think the concern I had was, we are having, was it an RFP go out for a building, to think about increasing the building, right?
Yeah, that can't go out until July 1. The funding for that won't be available till July 1.
So whatever we're doing here better tie into that piece.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the other thing that I was curious about, but yeah, why don't we do that?
All right, if it's all right
And
with you.
can we clarify, is this just for the cost of the piece of equipment, or is it cost, installation,
Cost
type
and
of maintenance
installation.
agreement, all that? Is
I don't
it
believe there's any
included?
type of maintenance agreement with it,
Okay.
but it would be for the installation and the purchase of the equipment.
Okay,
Manufacturers back it up for 1 year.
yeah, whatever, all that stuff, yeah.
All right, so we're going to put it back on in 2 weeks to talk. If you can get the back up to Sean, Nancy, that would be great, and talk to Kevin, Sean, and
Yes.
be perfect. Nancy, you're here for the next one, which is the ambulance I guess it's abatement. We do this annually.
Really high.
And this is an abatement that you're looking at for about $93,370.93.
Correct. We didn't do it last year. The board adopted a policy several years back that calls for anything over 24 months to be considered for abatement. This would only look at those accounts that are over 60 months, so over 5 years old, which is one account in fiscal 12 and then the accounts in fiscal 13.
I see what you're saying. I made mistakes. So in other words, in fiscal 12, there was about $130 that was uncollected.
Correct.
And then in 2013, it's $93,370.93.
Correct, because you had already written off most of fiscal 12 in a prior abatement run.
So we're looking to write both those off. Right now, we currently have unpaid bill for ambulance service of $692,556.99.
Correct. And this would be about 13.5% of the receivable. I did go back and check last year's outstanding, and the exact same amount for fiscal 13 was outstanding as it was for fiscal 12 at this time last year.
Really?
So there's been no activity at all whatsoever on it.
Wow.
Is the number of 692,000 going up, or is it kind of the number that we're dealing with on a 5-year rolling basis?
It's going up because we didn't do anything last year
Gotcha.
to address the receivable.
Okay. And how are we addressing it?
Right now, the third-party biller will take their whack at trying to get collection. They'll go through the insurance company, they'll go through patient notifications. After that, it will go over to the deputy collector.
Yep.
And that has not been very successful.
Gotcha.
And then after that, the board has not adopted any further collection procedures. Anything after that potentially would be a collection agency.
To John's point, Nancy, is it getting, so this is just real old stuff, we're just writing it off, doing away with it. Is it getting cleaner? I think that's what John was getting at, is it?
Other than last
Or-
year, it
or-
sounds like last year was a bad year.
Interestingly enough, 14's 89,000, fiscal 15's 120. And I didn't get a chance, I want to go back at fiscal 15 to see if it was just a large commitment year, maybe because of the storms, there were more issues that year, or if we had put into place the handheld tablets where they can actually transmit the billing. We've done that. I just don't know. I thought it was a little bit older than fiscal 15. I thought we'd done that a few years prior to that. I wasn't able to touch base with the fire chief today. But fiscal 16's only 86,000, fiscal 17's only 74,000. So the receivable isn't as high in the later years.
All right.
Other than fiscal 15, which is that aberration.
Yeah.
So now they do everything through the tablet. They try to get everything so it can go immediately to the billing company, so they can immediately turn around and electronically bill the insurers and Medicare and Medicaid. And as we discussed a few years ago in a presentation to you, about 50% of what we bill, we cannot collect.
Right.
Because of the Medicare and Medicaid rules.
Questions from the board?
Just one point of interest is, this is six years old. So a lot of people that use this service are elderly people, and they could have passed away at this point in time, which is why you may not be collecting it. And clearly, we overbill, because Medicare doesn't pay.
Right.
You know, we bill $2,500 for the service, Medicare's only gonna pay $1,000, and that's the other $1,500 just gonna sit there forever. So, but then you get paid that from some of the insurance companies, and it's a big game.
And there was a little gamesmanship for a while there. There was a legislation that the Fire Chiefs Association was trying to get passed that would make the insurers not pay the patient anymore. And for a while, they were doing that, so that we did have some issues of, you've been in a motor vehicle accident, and all of a sudden, your insurance company sends you a $1,000 check. The last thing you're going to worry about is the fact that the town sent you a $1,000 ambulance bill because you think the insurance company's paying that. And they didn't. They sent the check to the patient.
Oh.
It's not reason, you didn't see a lot of people, bring those into town hall because they were just no motor
Not
vehicle
connecting
accident.
it,
They
right.
kind of got a few bills to pay.
All right, do we have a motion?
Move to approve the recommended abatements for all outstanding ambulance charges for FY 2012 and FY 2013 totaling $93,500.93.
Motion by Ms. Curran, seconded by?
Second.
Tie, but I'll say it was Mr. Vignani. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Perfect. Now, Nancy, you got the next one, Scituate Recreation Employee Disclosure.
Yes, this, we've done the last few years. This is when recreation, you normally see it at this time of the year when recreation is hiring for their summer programs.
Yep.
And we have some of their personnel who work for us in other areas. So most of the people on your list are teachers that in the summer are also going to be recreation leaders in different areas. And then we have a couple of younger people who work in more than one department. So one of them is an SCTV person, a young lady who's behind us today, who's also going to be working in
Make
the
sure
rec
you
program.
get yourself on TV there, all right? All right, good. So do we have a motion? I don't have it in front of me.
Move the Board of Selectmen
There it
as
is.
required by Mass General Law, Chapter 268A, have reviewed the disclosure forms from the following municipal employees who seek to provide personal services to Scituate Recreation. The exemption under Section 20B is approved for the following employees. Do we need to read all the employees?
I believe you do, right? You do.
Say as printed.
All right,
As printed.
Second.
discussion. Yeah, she's the
bad.
clerk,
The
we need to
clerk
get her
is
going, but
really-
we're getting.
That's why I deferred.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Sorry.
All right. By Ms. Canfield,
Harris.
seconded by Mr. Harris.
Thank you, and
Second,
congratulations,
let's
Mr. Chairman.
Could say condolences, too, either one works. All right, new business. I have a discussion vote, one-day liquor license. There should be 3 motions here. Anybody want to make them?
As soon as I get to it, Joe.
It could be a motion to move the Board of Selectmen to
To the
approve
board.
a one-day alcohol beverage license to Scituate Knights of Columbus on June 16,
So
2018, from 7 o'clock to 11 p.m., August 3rd, 2018, from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m., and August 4th, 2008, from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m.
So moved.
And it's also pending tip certification. Motion by Mr. Harris.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Vignani. All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
You're doing it all, John. Doing it
I know,
all.
Peter
I'm just trying to help
Yes.
everybody out.
Got my back.
I am. What else do we have? We have another one, don't we?
Yeah, I'm getting through all the.
It's a motion, Board of Selectmen, to approve a one-day wine and malt license to Silent Chef for an event at the Scituate Maritime Center on June 30th, 2018, from 11 a.m. till 3 p.m.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Curran, seconded by
Second.
Ms. Canfield. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous? The next motion?
Motion the Board of Selectmen approve one-day wine and malt licenses to Riva for an event at the Scituate Maritime Center on June 1st, 2018, from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m.
Motion by Ms. Curran, seconded by Mr. Vignani. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? Unanimous? In favor? All right, moving right along. Now we have a motion for a, read it off here, board and committee appointments.
Those are printed in front of you.
Yeah.
Updated and revised.
So
Oh,
there's
it's
an
a
updated and
revised
revised one. So the positions that we're looking to fill: agent for veterans benefits, Don Knapp; archivist, Betty Foster; custodian, tax title property, Pam Abitabli; custodian of veterans graves, Don Knapp; fair housing officer, Jim Boudreau; fence viewer, Paul Murphy; field driver, Neil Dugg; and a licensed agent, that's Sergeant Gerald O'Brien; local auction permit agent, Pam Abitabli; Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority, Al Bangert; the MAPC, which is Metropolitan Area Planning Council, Brad Washburn; Plymouth County Advisory Board, my favorite, John Dennehy; South Shore Recycling Cooperative, Sean McCarthy; South Shore Regional School District Representative. We don't have anybody for that.
Jack Manning.
I guess it's Jack Manning. Surveyor of lumber, measure wood and bark, Al Bangert; tree warden, Michael Breen; and veterans agent, Don Knapp.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Vignani, seconded by
Second.
Ms. Curran. All those in favor? Saying aye. Aye, it's unanimous. There's a second motion.
Move to appoint Mary Sansonito as the Assistant Town Accountant for a term of 3 years or until a successor is named.
Motion by Ms. Curran, seconded by Mr. Harris.
I'm sorry.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Now, what else do we got here? Other business? Liaison reports? Any liaison reports from anybody?
I have a question.
Ms. Canfield, go right ahead.
Well, since we have Nancy here and she attended the Public Building Commission meeting, and I was not able to attend, I wondered if you could give us an update on the HVAC issue there. 'Cause
Sure. They are having a meeting on Friday morning, all the players to talk about starting the work. They've ordered the duct fill, the item that's going within the duct to reduce the sound that's being transmitted from the compressor. That's expected to arrive in 2 weeks, and that's dead center in the middle of the project at the timeline. So they're looking for a kickoff probably at the beginning of June, hopefully. It depends on how this meeting goes on Friday. And then there would be a couple of weeks where there would be HVAC, shouldn't be an interruption in the HVAC system in that area, which is just the community room, the bathrooms in that lower lobby area. And then the second 2 weeks, there would be disruption, and they have to work with Jessie. Jessie was up here at this meeting, so she couldn't participate in that meeting, so they want to make sure that they don't disrupt the meetings that have already been scheduled for the community room, so that they're not comfortable, or they make some kind of accommodation to make sure that there's enough cooling down there during that period. So that's where they're heading right now. They expect the cost, hopefully not to exceed just over $60,000, and the architect has a piece of that cost as well.
So, Nancy, so what are they gonna do?
The overall scope of the project is to take apart the unit and
Okay.
move the compressor another room away. So they do have to do demolition in that closet area, not in the community room per se, but in the closet area. And then they're going to thread down into the ducts, these duckbills, and it's not a duckbill. That's the name of the thing that's on the seawall, but it's like a duckbill. That's the only thing I can remember, but it's a deafener that will absorb the vibrations that are coming through. So it's more than one problem that's going on. It's the compressor, how close it is to the room, the sound that's being transmitted, it's the fact that the ducts aren't lined. There's a lot of different problems, so this is going to try to address all of them. The acoustical engineers believe that this will remediate the problem. I don't know how far down this will remediate it, but any improvement in that room is certainly a positive improvement.
Yeah, it just needs to be fixed.
And we're paying for it?
We have a piece of it.
And the architect has a piece of it.
The architect
We have a piece of it because they built it wrong?
It's built as designed.
Then that's
So why
not,
are they
then that's
going-
not our fault.
Yeah.
It's
gotta
wrong,
explain this tonight.
it's the wrong unit in there.
It's not, according to the acoustical engineer, it's not the wrong unit. There should, Sean, I'm not an acoustical engineer, so
But Karen and I sat with a guy, that's all he does. and he looked at it for 5 minutes and said, it's wrong, it belongs on the roof. I just don't want the town to be stuck with something, that's all. And I'm not blaming you guys or anything like that, but I'm just telling you what Karen and I heard. So, is they gonna come back after it's all installed? And are they gonna test it again?
Doesn't have to, yeah.
And what will our recourse be if it's not gone and perfect? Because that's the point, right? They're asking us, you just said it's not going to completely remediate the issue. Potentially, won't know until it's done, but is there going to be some sort of language or guarantee throughout this process that we want it completely remediated?
They're gonna have to fix it, so it's within whatever the acceptable parameters are for that type of run. The acoustical engineer believes this will do it.
So it's gonna cost more than 60 grand to put it on the roof?
Putting it on the roof, the system is not designed for that. They'd have to redesign the whole thing, and I think it would be a lot more expensive to do that.
I mean, it's a useless room right now for a meeting.
It's only useful for small meetings when everybody's sitting around a table. Yeah, which is not what it's designed for.
It's not what it's not, yeah.
Right, so that's, this is supposed to fix it.
So if they keep to their proposed timeline, we'll know fairly shortly the impact of the space.
We have a meeting there? Public comment?
Let's fix it.
You're not going to hear anything, yeah.
You can't
That's what I'm saying. I'm happy to put it there and say,
And we're gonna
let's
turn
hear it,
it off
because then
in
I'll be
July
like,
and August.
here's our proof that guess what, it doesn't work.
We're gonna turn the air conditioning off in July and August.
Right.
No, not, just, it would be probably the latter 2 weeks of June.
It'll just be that room, it'll be the whole library.
All right, tell you what we'll do, is we're going to put that on the next agenda. How about that? Discuss it. Because I know we're under other business, so we can get more background. Kevin can come.
Thank you for that.
And we go through it. And then, you know what, let's, if we'd like, maybe we can have the building committee chair come in, if that's possible. I don't care.
We'll have Kevin come in, Kevin Kelly, and we'll see if John has to, John will do it.
All right. Other reports, anybody else?
I met with the town planner and myself met with the 7th grade class last week and talked to them. They've got a school project going on where they're gonna try and come up with some great idea for the town. And if it passes all the steps along the way, they may come and present something to us as a way to improve our community. So
That's exciting.
that was a nice event.
Anybody else? No?
Are you going to talk about graduation?
Go right ahead.
This Friday at Scituate High School, the class of 2018 will be graduating, and the board would like to congratulate all of the wonderful young men and women that will be crossing that stage.
Congratulations, that's awesome.
At
It's hard to
6
believe
p.m.
it. Hard to believe it. You're not graduating, right? Oh, my God.
Oh, you are?
Psyched. Only update I have to say is that the Scituate varsity baseball team won its game this afternoon. As a result, they made the playoffs.
Sweet.
I'm a little biased, my son's on the team, but we're very excited. They've had a lot of challenges, so they made it, so
Good.
we're very excited for them. Correspondence, why don't we put correspondence on for the next week? Is that okay with the board? Fair enough. Approval of meeting minutes. Motion to accept the minutes of the Board of Selectmen meeting held on May 8th, 2018.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Vignani, seconded by
Second.
Ms. Curran. I think I am going to recuse myself or abstain because I don't think I was here for that meeting. So I'll take the vote. I don't think so.
On May 8th.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's 4, and I'll abstain. Move to accept, somebody going to move to accept and not release the executive session minutes for the Board of Selectmen executive session held on May 8th, 2008, since matters discussed are still pending at this time.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Curran, seconded by
Second.
Mr. Vignani. All those in favor?
Aye.
And I'll recuse myself, so it's 4-0. Next, aside from that, motion to
Move to
adjourn
adjourn and
at
sign documents.
9:16 by Mr. Vignani, seconded by Ms. Canfield. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Unanimous. Folks, good night. We'll see you next Tuesday.